What's up, basketball coaches, players, and fans? Welcome back to the Pass First podcast, where we share our knowledge of the game. My name is Augie Johnston, and I'm here with my partner, Alex Engel, and we hope that you are able to take something away from today's episode. Today, we have Trevor John on today, who's going to be talking a lot about shooting, a prolific, elite-level shooter. And I don't say that lightly because this guy can really knock him down. So it's really excited to pick his brain today. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button. If you're watching or listening on iTunes, make sure to subscribe there as well. So let's go ahead and get right into the episode. All right, guys, here we have Trevor John, a player who has played at a few different universities and now is about to begin his overseas career. And his journey has been built on the back of his three-point shooting. So anyways, welcome to the show. Thank you for being on. And if you could just give us like a 30-second background, then we would love to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, Augie, Alex, appreciate you guys having me on. Definitely looking forward to this conversation today. So quick background, played in college at Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, as well as Drexel University, which is out in Philadelphia, in the Colonial Athletic Association. Played my high school ball in the Bay Area, East Bay, Monte Vista High School, 2014 California State Champs. Shout out all my guys. So I'm starting my professional career over in the top league in Romania. I'll be leaving here in a few weeks. Really looking forward to that opportunity. Like you said, shooting's always been the backbone of my game, and it's really helped gotten me to a great point in my career, and I'm pretty fortunate to be where I'm at.
Very nice. So what was the situation in high school? I got to dig into that a little bit because it seems like I'm the only one that doesn't have a state championship in this world, because every single person that we bring on seems like they have one. So just give us a quick 30 seconds of how that went down, because that's special.
Yeah, man, we had a really special group my senior year. We were coming off a crushing loss in our junior year in the section quarterfinals. We had 5 senior starters, all of each other's best friends in the world, like really unique circumstances. We had 3 college guys in our starting lineup. Myself, I was a Division I guy. Our point guard went to UC San Diego, Division II, and our center played at MIT, Division III. And we just had a special group. We defended really well. No team that we played against scored more than 59 points in a game. We shared the ball. We could really play. We ended up going 32-1. And we won the California Division I state championship in 2014. Beat a team with like 7 Division I guys. They had an NBA player. It was just a special group. We played team basketball. You look at us, you're like, no, there's no way these guys are beating some of the teams that they're beating. But we found ways just by being gritty and playing together as a team.
Yeah, it's a good lesson there that if you guys want to play Division I basketball and right out of high school, like win games, that's going to get you noticed. What kind of numbers did you put up in that high school, like your best year in high school?
We were so balanced, right? Overall, I was 1,000-point scorer in high school. Some like 1,200 points, some around there. I don't know the exact number, but I was like 18 and 8 rebounds, 3-4 assists. We spread the wealth. I was around 17, 18. My highest year, we had our big man was about 14, 15. Our point guard was 13, 14. We were really, really spread out, and we had a lot of guys that could put the ball in the hoop.
Yeah, you're kind of talking that down a little bit, but 18's or 17 point something, 18, that's a lot on a state championship team. That's not that much on the last place team where their best player, jacks up every shot and they don't win games. But right. Okay, cool. That's great. Alex, is there anything you want to add there as far as I know he's being humble on some parts before we just dive into the shooting?
Yeah, just for those listening, and if I'm remembering this correctly, you broke Drexel's single season 3-point record. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did my senior year. Yeah.
And that was in 1 year, which to me is even more impressive that you came in 1 year and broke the record. Like that's, usually that's a thing where you're in the system for 2, 3, 4 years and you kind of figure it out and you click, and it's like you just came in right away and broke it, and you broke it by a pretty big margin, right?
Yeah. So the record going in was 92. That was the record that I had to beat, and I ended up with 103. And me being myself, I'm hard as heck on myself. So, I can look back and I'm like, boy, honestly, if I look back at how many in and outs I had or Just some of these other shots that barely missed. I probably really should have been around 115. So I always get myself and my dad, who, for the listeners, my dad was a college coach for 30 years. He and I always kind of go back and forth on that. Like, oh, we really should have been like, 115, 120 if you would have been making all your shots, right? But yeah, so I ended up breaking the single season record at Drexel. And I took so many threes my senior year, I qualified for the career leaderboard. So I have the all-time 3-point percentage record for a career at Drexel. So I took so many threes my last year.
So funny. Okay. So let's dive right into this stuff. We got coaches listening. We got players listening. And this is kind of just an audible question right now, but what's the difference? How is that possible? What was you guys doing at Drexel that was allowing you to get open threes when everybody knows that you're a shooter, you're looking to shoot threes? They obviously were doing something to get you shots. What was it?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that stuff is dictated by matchups too, right? Like, for example, the first team we played was Eastern Michigan, first game of the year on the road. Their head coach was a former assistant at Syracuse, so they ran the Syracuse 2-3 zone. So I took 17 threes my first game at Drexel, right? And so I was pulling because that was what we dictated as part of our scouting report was, this will be our best chance to win. They've got 2 7-footers and some 6'8" wings. We're going to have to hit threes, right? So took 17 threes the first game. So that was never approached that number again. I got to like 14 or 15, maybe another game, but 17 was the most. Then other than that, man, we had a great offensive scheme. We really moved the ball well. We had a fantastic point guard who's still there now. He'll be a junior, but he's an excellent point guard. We had a 4-man that was really skilled with the ball. He could handle the ball. He could do kind of everything. We had another couple guards that could really attack off the bounce. We had a really excellent big man that could rebound, set screens, finish off of dump downs and stuff like that. I mean, we had all 5 starters averaging double-digit points. So we really had a balanced team. We had a great offensive scheme that allowed everyone to play to their strengths, and you couldn't really key on one guy. I think that's what was really the big thing here.
Nice. Would you say, let's talk a little X's and O's. Would you say that there was a specific set or a specific like secondary, or were you getting your threes in transition a lot, or was it just a combination of all that stuff?
It was definitely a combination, and especially as the year went on. I mean, I think early in the year, throughout the first, I think it was like 13 games, I'd made 48 threes in the first 12, 13 games, which at that point was like number 2 in the country, right? So from that standpoint, I think a little bit was early on. Maybe teams weren't keen on me as much. We had our 4-man was coming off of a pretty good season, and he was kind of probably the number 1 defensive, I guess, option for the other teams, right? They were focused on him maybe the most. But I would say it's kind of a mixture of everything. I loved getting out in transition, especially being a guy. I'm not a freak athlete, right? So I have to get a lot of my stuff off of deception and being smarter and getting to my spots. Got a lot of stuff in transition, got a lot of stuff in the half court just based off of moving hard and moving well without the ball. And then some of it was I made a lot of tough shots. I did. I made a lot of contested tough shots where, if you're a defender, you've been in any pickup game and some guy hits a tough shot and you're like, come on, and you're rolling your eyes. I'm one of those guys, for lack of a better term. And I'm one of those guys that I can make tough shots. And I think that helps set me apart.
Yeah, and for the listeners at home, especially the players, like you got to realize that like the NBA 3-point line to you seems very far, but to some people it's just a layup. Like there's no difference, right, between the high school 3 and the NBA 3 for some people. So that's the way to do it, man. Those are deep. Okay. So I guess the question is, were you always a good shooter? Like, was that always kind of your role, and you feel like you're finally at a spot now where you get to show it, or was there a time when you were, more of a defensive guy? What's the deal on that?
Well, I'll preface it by saying I've never been the best defender on any team I've been on. It's one of those things where I picked up a basketball when I was really young. When I was 3 years old, I had a little Nerf ball and I was shooting on a 10-foot hoop at my older brother's AAU games. I go out at halftime or whatever, and I learned how to align my hips and get my shoulder and, my arm and my elbow underneath the ball when I was like 3 years old. And then after that, it was repetition. I was always a really good shooter, but I was constantly shooting the ball, whether it was in my house, I had one of those little Papa-Shot machines where I was just constantly, grabbing. You're practicing that. I credit that machine really for helping set the framework for the speed of my release, because I was just constantly do that for an hour a day, and I'd be down there for an hour talking to myself, playing games, whatever. So it was a lot of repetition when I was young. I think that helped set a framework for the next steps. And my form kept constantly changing as I got older and stronger. But when I was younger, I was also big. I grew early, so I learned a jump hook when I was 8 years old, which is kind of a fun fact. A lot of people don't know. I was a big really until I got older. And then I was really able to develop my guard skills, later in my high school career and then into college, and then obviously to the present day. But it was a whole lot of repetition. And it was just kind of figuring stuff out for myself. Like I had a great resource with my dad, but he never forced anything on me. It was always, he would let me come to him if I had any questions. He'd give advice here and there. But it was a lot of trying to figure things out for myself, and then trial and error. And hey, you see the ball go in. Basketball's a pretty fun game, And when you're on your own, you're working out or you're shooting in the backyard or in a gym or wherever you are, basketball's a lot more fun when you see the ball go through the hoop, for sure.
Nice. Yeah, that definitely brings us into our next segment, where we're going to be talking a little bit about your shooting routine, how you developed it, and all that. Because as far as we just asked, I just asked you, were you always a good shooter? And you said yes, but you've been working on it your whole life. I think Alex and I both are a little bit in the other boat, where at a younger age we probably wouldn't consider ourselves shooters, but then we did develop it in time. So I guess the question is, and I'll ask you, and then Alex, you can compare yours after. But like, what is a shooting routine that you would do in college or high school when it's just you by yourself in the gym? Like, what does that look like?
I'd say, as with everything, you always evolve, right? If you get caught doing the exact same thing over and over again, you're going to get stagnant. You're not really going to see the results you want to see. So in high school, my workouts would be a lot different. I was a multiple sport athlete. So I was constantly juggling different sports as well, which, by the way, the younger kids listening, play multiple sports as long as you can. It helps develop such a great set of athletic skills that you just cannot teach by playing one sport. And you'll see any college coach, they say they prefer recruiting kids that play multiple sports. So as an aside, younger kids play multiple sports. And then from a workout standpoint, I was always into working on shooting and offensive stuff, and just any type of shot, whether it was, floater, step backs, threes, whatever it was. I always loved working on those types of shots and just trying to do stuff at game speed. I don't really have a set routine of things. Like I said, I don't like doing the exact same workout 2 times in a row, because I just like constantly challenging my body and challenging my brain, and not letting myself get used to the same thing over and over again, because I think that's where you stagnate. So I couldn't really give a set workout. I just think that the best thing you can do is to do whatever you do at game speed. You have to go hard as heck, because working out slow and then trying to speed up when the game is going 10-15% faster, you'll play worse. You won't be able to make the same shots you could make sitting in a gym with a rebounder or by yourself. So that's the biggest thing for me. And then when I got to college, Alex can attest to this, because Alex coached me for a year in college. I learned how to shoot from different, and this is an elite skill. This is for older people listening. Younger kids, you'll get there one day. I learned how to shoot from multiple release points. So I probably shoot from anywhere between 3 and 5 release points, depending on a game or a situation. Whether it's in front of the face, my normal shot is I shoot from just above my nose, right around my forehead. That's my normal release, in front of my face. But then I'll also shoot from low to the side when I need to get a lot of arc. I'll shoot high and to the side a little bit, like how JJ Redick shoots when I really need to get a shot off quickly and somebody's chasing me. Sometimes I'll shorten my release if I have a short shot clock, or if I have a really long defender chasing me. And sometimes when I can take a little bit more time, I'll set myself up, and I'll be able to give myself more time, relatively, fractions of a second, but more time to get set and shoot it a little bit slower. So that was something I think that has helped me continue to develop and not, keep the same routines, right? Is learning a new skill and then trying to master that and then moving on to the next one.
That really reminds me of Larry Bird when you're talking about like
Yeah.
different release points and stuff like that. And that's a really interesting topic and something that we're going to continue to talk about right now. So, Alex, your shot is definitely right center in front of forehead, right? Do you
Yeah.
feel like that helps you, hurts you, or is that something you want to change, or what? What's your opinion on that?
I like it. I mean, I used to shoot like when I was in high school, I used to shoot like down here, like right in front of
Yeah.
my face down here. And my coach, and it was directly in the middle. And now, in high school, I think my senior year, my coach was like, "Hey, you need to get your shot over and up more." So I used to shoot it like more to the right, kind of like up in here. And I still do. I mean, I know you said the kind of more forehead, but it's somewhere in this area. And it's probably changed over time a little bit, left or right, but it's roughly in the same spot. But I like it. I'm able to get pretty good power on it. But one thing I notice is, like you talked about shooting from farther out. For me, I almost want to say like I have a limit on how far out I can shoot. Like I can get out to the NBA line, maybe a little bit past that, and still feel pretty comfortable. But I have some friends that shoot from a little bit lower and from different spots, and they can just bomb from like damn near half court, and they still can shoot from there. Where for me, like I just can't take a regular jump shot from that far. I don't know if that hurts me, but it is something I've noticed that guys that have like little lower set points, I think they can get a little more power under it. If you're shooting from like way up here, it's just hard to have that type of power when your elbow isn't, it's not loaded like that. So that's something for me that was just something I've noticed on myself. But I like where I shoot from. I can get my shot off pretty quick from that spot.
And Trevor, you said your base shot kind of is similar, right? Did you say it was kind of more center, or is it more to the side? Because you're
Yes.
shooting. You go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're totally right. Just so my base shot, if I'm in a gym, I'm by myself, or if I'm catch and shoot and I have time to release, my base shot is from here. So from the side, I'm here right in front of my face. I have a little bit of a slingshot. I'm not quite 90 degree. I pull it back a little bit. That's sitting there. That's my base shot. And then I'll shoot and here I'll just, for all the ones I described earlier. So if and Alex, actually, I think you made a great point. You were talking about some of your friends that shoot with a little bit lower release points, they can bomb it. And it reminds me of how Steph Curry shoots, because Steph Curry realistically starts a shot from down here. Like when you watch, he starts a shot from down here, but he doesn't release it till it's up here, right? So, and that's where I shoot some of my shots from when I need to either get it off really quickly, or if I'm shooting from a little bit deeper, I'll maybe pull it a little bit to the side and I'll shoot from here instead of here. I'll pull a little bit here. And then the other one I was describing was the kind of the JJ Redick one, where if I have a long guy chasing me and I'm going to my right, so I'll be catching it coming off the screen and I'm catching it left, right. I'll shoot it from up here and I'll pull it up, another couple inches to give myself a little bit of extra space for those other guys chasing. So yeah, and that's an elite skill, right? I mean, that's not something that you learn overnight. That's something that takes a ton of repetitions, and it takes a lot of trial and error to figure out what works for you. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody, but I think it's definitely something that if you have that skill, which I've seen Alex in a gym, been in a gym with you too, Augie, like you guys have those skills, but you've also put the work in to be able to get to that point, right? So it's not something you can just learn overnight. But I think it's very beneficial for anybody that can shoot the ball.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this right now as a player, what he's talking about is, okay, you're doing your catch and shoot drills that you always do, and you're shooting 40%. You're not in this conversation that we're talking about right now. This is for if you can step on the 3-point line, shoot 50 threes, and knock down 40, on a consistent basis. Then, okay, at that point, you're looking to challenge yourself, with different maybe release points and this kind of stuff we're talking about right here. Okay. Interesting stuff. I think that's a whole another podcast, but let's go ahead and continue talking about you and your shooting journey. So we kind of alluded to this earlier, but this is a question that I always wondered as a player, because as a shooter myself, there was games where I would get shut down. And then I'm like, well, how does Steph Curry get off so many threes every game? How does, everyone knows he's going to be shooting threes. So what are some ways when last season the other teams knew that you were looking to shoot threes? We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but give me some direct examples, whether it's a double screen or something. What are some ways that you're still able to get off 3-pointers in the game?
I think one of the biggest skills that I've had to continue to develop, I mean, I'm definitely nowhere near perfect. There were games where I would get frustrated if I didn't feel like I was just getting, just smothered by defenses, whether it be, one guy completely face guarding me, with a second guy shading and making sure there was no chance that I was going to be able to get a shot off. Not even just an open shot, not even get a shot off. Where I had a few games where teams, that was their goal, was to not let me get a shot off. So I think the biggest thing that I've had to try and develop is that skill of playing within the game, not trying to force anything. I had a game, I'll remember this. We were playing at William and Mary, who they had an NBA player on their team. They had a couple other guys, guy that transferred to North Carolina, a guy that transferred to UCF, really high level team. And the first half at their place, I didn't get a shot off. I didn't take a shot in the first half. Played like 17 of the 20 minutes, didn't get a shot off. Second half ended up taking 5 or 6. It was one of the lowest, shot totals I had that season. But I was trying to play within the flow of the game. Like, I didn't want to force anything. I didn't want to get us out of the rhythm of our offense just because I felt like I wasn't getting my touches, which is a skill that I definitely had to develop. I mean, that's not easy. I'm someone that my DNA is to score the ball, and I used to get a little bit frustrated when I wasn't scoring or, whatever it was. And I had to check myself a little bit and be like, you know what, no, I need to take a step back and analyze things. But to kind of go off your question, what kind of offensive sets or anything, stuff that gets me open. I love running off of pin downs, pin down screens or any double screens or any sort of misdirection where I can use my basketball IQ and my deceptive skills to get open. Because I'm not a guy that's going to go fly down the lane and windmill on somebody. So any skill where I can use any of the bevy of moves that I use to get open, which I have a lot. I have a lot of fakes and stunts and stops and starts to kind of throw defenders off balance and not give them a consistent pattern to try and track. I always go off of this screen this way, or I always, 70% of the time I go off the screen to the right and 30% I go to the left. When I go to the right, I use this move. When I go to the left, I use this move. I try and switch things up so that there's not a pattern that anybody can really diagnose. And I just want to try and always keep guys off balance. But my favorite thing for sure is doing that and watching frustration on defenders' faces when, or on the coaches getting mad at guys like, oh, how's he even touching the ball? We're supposed to be in a total face guard, or, whatever it is. But yeah, those things for sure.
Okay. Very nice. Take us back to a time when you were in a shooting slump, like maybe in high school or college or any time. And first of all, just describe, what define that shooting slump, and then tell us a little bit about how you got out of it or what you felt was causing it. Just tell us that story.
So I'll go back to my last year at Drexel because it's the freshest and it's the season that people probably know most of me about. So after the preseason, we'd played 12 or 13 games in the preseason. I'd made, I said it earlier, I made 48 53s in the first 12, 13 games. And then we got to conference play right after the new year. And the first 4 or 5 games of league, I was shooting. So prior to league, I was shooting somewhere between 46 and 49%, somewhere to there, and from the three. And then we got to the first 4 or 5 games of league, and I was just getting hounded on a nightly basis because teams had, whether it was 4 days to prepare, they had a whole week to prepare. Defenses were locked in. And so I got into a little bit of a slump 4 or 5 games where I was making 3-ish threes a game maybe. But I wasn't shooting on a great percentage. It was taking somewhere between 7 and 11 tries to make 3, right? Whereas before it was maybe 3 for 6 or 4 for 8, or, a couple games went 7 for 9, 8 for 10. So I got a little bit of a slump with teams just really focusing on me. And I got into a little bit of a rushing situation where I was going maybe a little bit faster than I wanted to. And so my whether it was my body mechanics or anything on the lower half or the upper half, something got a little bit out of rhythm. And that went over the course of probably about 50 to 60 attempts. So I was probably shooting somewhere between 35 and 37%, which for me I call that a slump for me because I'm hard on myself, but anywhere between 35 and 37% for, 6-7 games. Then once I got more comfortable, I was able to get those numbers back up. But it was a mental grind for sure. I mean, it was a mental grind because you have to be able to mentally deal with the fact that you're not shooting at your top capabilities, right? As we've all been in that situation on, on this podcast, where it's tough sometimes to check yourself mentally and just take a step back and realize, hey, I'm not making every shot. It's going to be all right. I just need to trust myself, trust all the work that I've put in before to get to this point. Trust that I know what I'm doing, and I'll be able to get back to what I know I'm capable of.
Yeah, that's good. And so I'm guessing, well, I'm not guessing, I know you had the green light there. So that's a huge thing to have the green light. If you don't have it, it's a challenge. Alex, is there any time or at any point in your career where you felt like you didn't have the green light?
Yeah, I mean, probably more in high school. I didn't. Yeah, I don't want to say I had like a red light, but I definitely didn't have what you would call a green light at all. In college, for the most part, if I was open, my coaches wanted me to shoot because they knew I could shoot the ball. But that was part of my development as a player too. Like in high school, I wasn't as good of a shooter. And by the time I had gotten to college, it took me up until probably realistically, like I didn't really start working on my shooting a lot until my senior year of high school. Which I was just a late bloomer, and I didn't have a lot of people to teach me like what to do. So once I got into like freshman year of college, sophomore year of college, that's when coaches would get mad at me for not taking a shot. Like I can remember a couple times specifically in junior college where I didn't take a shot and my coaches yelling at me like, that's why I have you in the game, basically. So yeah, I didn't have big slumps. Like I can't speak to anything like that. Like with what Trevor had, but I definitely like in the high school, I didn't have that type of trust from my coach to just be like, hey, fire away. And that is it's hard to want to take and make shots if you're worried about, I was so worried sometimes, and I look back on it, and I think I may have even said this in the past when we talked about being like more aggressive. I would have taken some more shots and been more aggressive in high school looking back on it, because there were times where I was open and I should have shot, but I was so worried that like, oh, if I miss, my coach is going to yank me.
Yeah.
And that's not a good feeling. I really don't like that feeling. And I try never to tell that, even my players that aren't great shooters, I try and say to them, hey, if you're open, like, and you can put some work in, you've been putting work in to shoot, take the shot, because the odds are they're going to make it at a higher percentage just by feeling confident, even if they're not an amazing shooter.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Just that. And that's the pressure I think that we put on ourselves. I bet if you looked back, Alex, you probably would be like, man, my coach wasn't even trying to tell me to not shoot. Maybe he told me one time to swing it, and then the rest of your career, you're like, oh, I got to swing, because I was the same way.
Yeah, that's true. That might be the case.
Interesting stuff. Okay. And in talking about the green light, there's levels to this, right? I mean, like KD, right, has the ultimate green light. If he wants to do a 360 in the air and shoot a three, like he probably can. He's not going to get yanked for it.
Yeah.
And so with you, Trevor, as being a shooter, kind of your whole journey, having that green light, at what point, or did you ever have like the green light to shoot like a step back? Like, I know like in high school, if I was to shoot a step back three, like that would not be a good decision by me. Were you shooting step back threes in high school?
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those skills that I had developed early, and I'd shown that I could make it at a pretty high clip, relative. You're making it, 45, 50% of the time in a game. That's a pretty good shot. So it's definitely one of those skills that you want to develop. And especially as you play against taller and longer defenders, it's going to be a way for you to help get yourself open, because easy catch and shoot, as you guys know, being knockdown guys yourself, and anybody can catch and shoot. You can sit in a gym with a rebounder or on a shooting machine and catch and shoot threes at 75%. You can do that all day. And, you can trick yourself into thinking you're a big time shooter, but that's the next step, is being able to make those shots when you're either on the move or you're being rushed by a longer defender, or your footwork's not the exact same. You have to find a way to get your lower half on balance so that you can take a balanced shot up top and be able to knock it down from different angles. And that was something that I learned when I was young, but definitely got way better at as I got older. And now I feel comfortable going either way. Step back, side step, pump fake, one dribble, step back, two dribble, side step, whatever it is, any sort of combination. But it's something that you have to continually develop over time and keep adding little pieces to over time. It can't be jumping from 0 to 100. It's like going from sitting on your butt for 3 months during quarantine to try and go running, 1,500 or 100 meter sprints. You're just not gonna be able to do it. You're going to be feeling some type of way, for sure. So I think it's kind of along those same lines. It's something you have to just brick by brick, put in the work, keep adding those pieces, each time you work out.
in high school, did you have the green light to shoot NBA threes?
Yeah. So, when I had a ton as a senior, there was a joke, a guy on my team, whose dad is a former NBA head coach. He's now a college head coach. The kid on my team, he's one of my close friends. He used to joke around. He's like, Trevor's got the greenest light in the state. Like it's like he could pull it from wherever he wants, and no one would care, right? And at the time, it was a little bit of a dig, right? But at the same time, it was like there was some truth to it too. But it was one of those things it was one of those things where I didn't earn that, right? It wasn't a case where I didn't earn that right to be able to shoot those shots. Like I was in the gym,
sure,
6 a.m. before school, and then, before practice, after practice, constantly working. And once you put in that work and you prove you can make those shots, it's hard not to give a guy that type of green light, no matter what it is. You see, this is an NBA example, but you see anybody that watched the first NBA games last night, JJ Redick took some incredibly difficult shots. He makes them because he's, one of the best in the world at what he does, but he's had to put in a lot of work to get to that point. And to be able to have that kind of trust, to be taking shots flying, 100 miles an hour off of screens, taking a dribble, and he's shooting a shot where he ends up 10 feet away from where he initially jumped from after he lands. So yeah, it's definitely something you have to earn one way or the other. Like everything comes through hard work, and that's the biggest takeaway, I think.
Yeah, and you talk about earning it and your routine and getting up at 6 a.m. So what does that look like? What did that look like? And let's talk about high school. Like, you don't need to tell us like the one day that you had the hardest day ever of working out, but tell us like a typical day, like a consistent day that would comprise of a morning workout and stuff. What'd that look like?
So I will say those things changed between my junior and senior years. The summer of junior year, which is the biggest summer trying to get recruited by colleges for the most part. I was a multiple sport athlete. I was still trying to decide what sport I wanted to try and play in college, whether it was basketball or baseball, or if it was going to try and do both. And so I hadn't done the morning stuff and after practice stuff as a freshman and sophomore, and even a little bit as a junior, where I'd be 6 a.m. in the morning and then stay after practice and work. And then I decided this summer going into my senior year that, you know what, I just want to focus on basketball. I'll still play baseball in the spring of my senior year, but I want to focus on basketball. So starting that June, right before the AAU season, it was 6 a.m. in the gym, skill work till 7:30, take a half hour off. We had a team practice in the summer from 8 to 10. We'd take, a few hours off, depending on what day it was. We'd have summer league games. And then getting into the fall, when it was actual basketball season time, 6 a.m. in the gym till 7:30. Till 7:30. Go to school, do that whole deal. Practice 3:30 to 5:30, in the gym 5:30 to 6:30, working on whatever I felt either didn't go well in practice that day, or stuff that I didn't get to in the morning session, I would try and get to at night. And not try and overtax myself, but at least I got through that mental checklist of what I wanted to get done that day.
That's good stuff. And the crazy thing about it is you said that you just did that one season. I bet that was a transformational off season right there. And if you're a player listening to this, get that takeaway right there that, hey, make the next 3 months just grind session, and then you can actually, really become, a much better player than you were just 3 months prior. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about shooting form and the technicalities of shooting. I'm going to throw this one at Alex. This is a question we've talked about before, but are you a hop or a 1-2 step guy?
I like the 1-2 step personally. I think you can do more out of it, but I think you should do both. Like, I think you need to know how to do both, because it just, the more things you can do, the better. But personally, I like the 1-2 step because for me, I feel like if I'm going to the left or I'm going to the right, it's more fluid and quicker for me to catch and get into my shot. I just feel like once you hop into it, especially if you're like trying to turn your body sideways and hop at the same time, it can be harder. But I don't want to say hopping is wrong. I just feel like it's 1-2 step to me is a little quicker. So it's my personal preference.
And then Trevor, what's your personal preference?
So my personal preference depends on the shot. So it depends on how much time I have or what shot I'm taking. Um, if I have a mid-range shot and I'm coming off of a curl, I like going 1-2 for sure. But if I'm coming off a deep curl, like a 3-point line or the NBA three, or I just need to get a shot off really quickly, I'm always in a hop step one way or the other, because I can get my feet down, plant it at the same time, and go up right away and be able to keep that defender that's chasing me off balance and making him have to really create a tough scenario for me to get the shot off. He really has to reach. If I were to take that 1-2, especially going to my left, so going right left, you lose another 6 inches of space on your shot between a guy chasing behind you this way, whereas left, right, guy's chasing you. You have it on this side. He's chasing you this way. I try and give myself that extra space going right, left by always right, left going on a hop step if I have a deep shot, or if it's a mid-range going 1-2. You can generally create a tighter curl going into a mid-range shot, so the guy typically gets caught on the screen because you're curling closer to the rim instead of giving that defender an extra little bit of space coming off that screen chasing you. So it depends on the shot, but I prefer the 1-2 coming off of deep curls for threes.
Okay, so you're in the gym, you've got somebody rebounding for you, you're just doing some spot up jumpers. What's your footwork? Is it 1-2, or is it hop, or is it a combo?
It's a combo. I like to practice everything, and I actually like to practice reverse footwork too, which is as a right-handed shooter, catching it right left. Because I just like to prepare myself for any situation. I don't want to be caught unprepared where I need to get a shot off, or, it's a great situation for a momentum boosting three, and my footwork's not exactly what I have prepared for, right? If I only did one type of shooting footwork on my shots, if I only did one type, I like to prepare for all three just in case, because I never know when I'm going to need it, right? So I prefer probably the hop step or a left right 1-2. Both of those are probably 45% of the time each, and then the last 10% is catching it right left just in case.
Okay. And would you consider yourself more of a jump shooter or more of a set shot?
I'm more of a jump shooter for sure. I think that stems from when I was younger. I had a little bit lower release, like especially when I first got to Cal Poly, my release was lower than it is now. When I was 18 versus now when I'm 24, my release is probably a couple inches higher. So I needed to get that shot off over taller defenders, especially if they were sitting in my lap on a shot and I just needed to get it off. So I would call myself more of a jump shooter than a set shooter. But I also think you can be dictated by a situation. If you have a ton of time and you've practiced it, shoot it however you're comfortable with. I think it's just whatever your body feels more comfortable with, and whatever you've put the work in on, I think is what people should stick with. I don't want to say there's one right way to shoot, because there's totally not. But I prefer getting a little bit more air underneath my shot. Yeah.
Okay, and how about you, Alex?
I was just going to say, I think that's
Okay.
a good point. And we talked about it before a little bit that, there's not necessarily, it's not a formula. It's like whatever you prefer is going to be, at the end of the day, you're trying to make shots. So whatever is best for you it's what you should do. And, in what maybe for Trevor, he's quicker because it does a certain way. And maybe someone else, they do it a different way, but they're a little slower. But if they're missing every shot by going quicker, then it doesn't really matter, So you want to work on something that works for you. For me, I do kind of the same where I do work on the hop, but not quite as much. I would say, like, if you said 45, I probably am like 80% 1-2 step and like 15, 20%, a hop. But where I do, you said like the right left footwork, I actually have not really worked on that out of the catch, like going left and catching right left. I'll do it if I'm going the other direction. Or I'm sorry, I guess I should say if I'm going right, I'm catching left right every time. I don't ever do the right left. Which is an interesting one. But where I do work on my right left footwork as a right hander is if I have the ball in hand and I'm like pulling up for a jump shot. So, that kind of awkward, like step in 1-2. I do like using that. I actually think that's really important because it makes most defenders aren't used to it. So a lot of defenders will drop their hands. But again, I guess that's a little different. That's off the dribble as opposed to catching and shooting. So.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I too think that, the hop, I feel like you can get more power, but then for some people that can, and I've noticed myself too, can throw you off almost like another variable to throw into your shot. But yeah, I agree. Practice both. You never know what you're going to have to do. Okay, so let's just, before we wrap this up, I'd like to talk a little bit more about what's next for you as a player in the short term. So right now, everyone's in quarantine. I know you mentioned you have an opportunity to play overseas. Is that official yet, or what's that looking like?
I signed a contract last week. I'll be playing in the top league in Romania, and that's all public knowledge. So I'm not breaking news here. Fortunately, I didn't want to get in trouble. But yeah, so I have an opportunity to go play for a great team out in Romania. It's be a really good situation, a really good league. Get to play against some really solid players and try and help kickstart my pro career. I spent this last season injured for the most part. I'd had an opportunity because I graduated in 2019. So I had an opportunity. I was signed to play to a team in the Czech Republic, first division. Some things fell through, got hurt, did a couple of G League workouts, was maybe going to have an opportunity in a training camp with the G League team. Found out I had a tear in my quadriceps tendon, so that set me back about 4 or 5 months. And then COVID hit, and it kind of shut the world down for a while. And so I did a camp in Las Vegas to help show people that I was healthy and had added stuff to my game. Playing a little bit more as a 1-2 than as a strict 2 now, just to try and keep developing my game and to keep trying to separate myself from my peers. I know my shot will always be my number one asset, but you can't just rely on one thing. I mean, you have to have a diverse game, especially nowadays. Everybody's so skilled. You have to have a diverse game to help set yourself apart. So I went to a camp. I did well, showed people I was healthy, had added stuff to my game. And then contract came about a week or two later. I'm really looking forward to it, and hopefully get out there in the next few weeks and get to work. And I'm really excited about that for sure.
Very nice. So you are going to be able to go over there then?
Yeah. Right now, because pro basketball players, when you go overseas, Augie, as you know, being a former player, you count as a worker, right? You get a work visa to be able to stay in that country. Obviously with the travel ban right now, no Americans are allowed to leisurely travel. But if you have documentation that you're over into another country and you're there for work, you're allowed into the country. And fortunately, in the great world we live in, basketball is a job, and that counts as work. And so it's beautiful. I'm really looking forward to it. It's a great city that I'm going to, and I'm really looking forward to it for sure.
Nice. Are you ever, I guess that before we wrap this up, the last question here is going to be about after you're done playing. So I know you got about another 10, 20 years left in those old legs, but
yeah.
Do you consider coaching when you're done playing?
It's one of those questions I've gotten so much in my lifetime, especially growing up with a coach as a dad. Or with my dad who was a coach, and I was able to go to school and get a degree in finance, and then I got my MBA from Drexel my last year. So I have a pretty good fallback plan. I would like to play as long as possible. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how healthy I'm going to be. I don't know what the situation's going to be like. God forbid if I don't go over there and play well. It's a cutthroat world, and you might just get cut for not playing well, right? I don't know. So I'd like to play as long as possible, but I've got some irons in the fire to try and have a nice fallback plan just in case. At this point, probably not going into coaching. I think I would like to do something a little bit more like in private wealth management or investment banking or something like that. Utilize my academic background and take that step in my post-playing career. But I'll tell you what, man, if I could get 10 to 20 years like you just said, I don't know. I think that'd be pretty fun.
Very nice. Yeah, just a quick shout out to your dad. Don't worry, he will catch the bug once he starts getting into that corporate world, and he'll be in the gym coaching some kiddos soon enough. Anything else, Alex?
No, I think that was it. We got a lot of good info today, and thanks for coming on, man.
All right, that's all we got for this week.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate that. So yeah, hope you guys liked today's episode. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button. If you're listening on iTunes, hit the subscribe button there as well, or on Spotify. We release a video once a week, so we will catch you guys in the next episode.